I walked through my front door expecting the usual chaos of a Tuesday night, dog barking, dinner burning, my daughters arguing over the TV. Instead, I stepped into silence thick enough to choke on. They were all there. My wife Layla, my girls, my mother, and my brother Steve, lined up across the living room like some kind of courtroom I didn't know I'd been summoned to. Layla sat straight-backed, hair pulled tight, eyes colder than I'd ever seen. My oldest whispered, "Dad, you should sit down." I didn't. I'd spent 12 hours pouring concrete in 90-degree heat. Whatever this was, I could take it standing. Then Layla said it. "John, you're not in charge of this family anymore." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. Then Steve shifted his weight like he owned the place. And that's when I realized this wasn't a family meeting. It was a replacement ceremony, and I was the one being replaced. Nobody answered me. My mom, Evelyn, sat in my recliner, my spot, hands folded like she was waiting on a verdict. Steve leaned against the fireplace like he'd paid the mortgage. My girls avoided my eyes and pretended the floor had answers. I set my tool bag down so carefully you'd think it was full of nitroglycerin. 12 hours in Texas heat, concrete on my boots, and I come home to this. The air felt stale, like the house itself was holding its breath. I scanned faces I'd known my whole life and didn't recognize what they were saying without words. I wasn't walking into a home. I was walking into a ruling. Somewhere in my head, I heard my old man's voice. "When your name's on the deed, you don't flinch." I stayed standing. If they wanted a meeting, they could look me in the eye. The clock ticked loud. No one blinked. That silence said more than anyone there. "Dad, please sit," Bella said, voice trying to be steady and grown. I love that kid. She still bites her lip when she's scared. I stayed up, straightened my back like I do before lifting a beam. Sitting felt like folding. "Say what you came to say," I told them. Steve was the only one who met my stare. He has that practice smile you get from selling certainty you don't have. Country club friendly with a little smirk hiding behind it. My mother cleared her throat like she was about to calm things down, the way she used to when we fought over the TV remote. But she didn't. This time, nothing gentle came. My girls held their breath. My hands remembered 100 times I'd fixed a leaky faucet at midnight. 100 bills I'd paid first. The room stayed organized around Steve like gravity had shifted his way. That's when the pit in my stomach told me I wasn't paranoid. Mia, my oldest, finally spoke, eyes shiny but jaw set. "Dad, you need to accept a new reality. You're not running this family anymore." She said it like she'd practiced, like someone had edited the lines to sound reasonable. I gave a dry laugh because the other choice was yelling. Layla jumped in with the counselor voice she uses at her studio, soft, controlled, almost soothing. "We're doing this because we care about you, John." The word care scratched like sandpaper. Caring usually looks like showing up at the driveway with a cold Gatorade, not staging a tribunal. I glanced at the mantle I built out of oak, at the pictures I hung, at the couch I paid off one overtime weekend at a time. A conversation would have started with a text. This was something else. I looked at Steve's polished shoes on my rug, and the last domino tipped. This wasn't about help. It was a handoff. I was being managed out. I walked out without slamming the door because men my age know that slamming only proves their point. On the porch, my hands shook like I'd just poured a slab alone. The sun was going down behind the live oaks, and I could hear a lawnmower 2 streets over. Normal life. Everywhere but here. I needed a voice that wouldn't gaslight me. I drove to Pete's place, best friend since auto shop. He's the guy who shows up with jumper cables and doesn't make a speech about it. On the way, I caught myself checking the rear view for my own expression. I looked like I'd heard a diagnosis you can't pronounce. Pete opened the door, took one look, and said, "Fridge, now." That's friendship for grown men. No questions until you can breathe. I told him everything, the semicircle, the line about not being in charge, the way Steve leaned. By the time I finished, the beer in my hand was warm and useless. Pete listened like he always does. eyes on me, not the clock. He didn't rush to fill the quiet, and that's how I knew the bad part was coming. "Layla used the word partner," I said, forcing it out like a splinter. He exhaled through his nose and rubbed the label off his bottle. "John, I figured you knew," he said. My fingers went numb. "Knew what?" He swallowed. "I saw them. 3 months back. Downtown, hands across the table. Didn't look like a work lunch." The room tilted 20 degrees. I thought of small things that hadn't made sense. The extra perfume, the help with the yard, Steve's sudden interest in high school soccer. The human mind is a cabinet. You shove suspicions into the back until the door won't close. Pete looked like he'd failed a test that didn't exist. "I should have told you," he said. I shook my head. A man wants to discover his own fire, even if it burns him. Hearing it out loud was worse than suspecting it alone. The words filled the corners of the room like smoke. I stood up, and the chair scraped the tile a little too loud. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. My body wanted to move, to lift, to fix, but there wasn't a stud to anchor into. Pete said, "Brother, breathe." I nodded, but air didn't feel like a friend. My mind went straight to the girls. Mia's science fair I missed last spring for a busted water main. Bella's art show I caught in the last 5 minutes. I'd told myself providing was a love language. Maybe it is. But love has to hear back. "How long?" I asked. "Months," he said. "I thought you were ignoring it." That word, ignoring, cut. I don't ignore rot. I find it and replace the board. "Not this time," I said. "Next step isn't yelling. It's knowing." The decision calmed me like cold steel in my hand. I drove for an hour just to let the anger orbit without crashing. Past darkened strip malls and quiet subdivisions, I let muscle memory steer while my brain unclenched. A man in his 40s learns that rage is an expensive habit. It breaks what isn't broken yet. I headed home and then didn't, circling the block twice like I was casing my own place. It's a strange thing to fear your front door. I ended up back at Pete's and slept on his couch, boots off, belt still on, like a roadside nap before another shift. At 2 a.m., I woke to the hum of his fridge and the glow of the microwave clock. I thought about every time I told Layla I was almost there from the job site and arrived after bedtime. We were two people living in the same house but punching different clocks. That realization hurt cleanly. The next one, about trust, hurt like a jagged nail. Morning came mean and bright, the way Texas mornings do after a sleepless night. I checked my phone. 118 missed calls, a handful of texts with, "We just want to talk." Talk is cheap when the truth is pricey. I deleted the voicemails without listening. Call it cold if you want. I call it triage. Step 1 of getting your life back is stopping the bleeding. I made coffee that tasted like pennies and wrote 3 words on Pete's notepad. Get the facts. Emotion is gasoline. Facts are the fire break. I showered, put on clean jeans, and drove to my house feeling more like an inspector than a husband. The garage door creaked like it had something to confess. I unlocked the kitchen door and waited. Silence. Layla's car was gone. Sometimes the only gift you get is an empty room. I took it. I walked straight to the bedroom, sat at the desk, and opened her laptop. The screen was already awake, like it had been waiting for me. Email open. Subject line from Steve at the top. Last night was incredible. For a second, I thought maybe it was a conference, a big client, anything but what it was. Then I clicked. The sentences didn't whisper. They bragged. Dinner looks. Hands under tables. Plans. When John isn't around. Some messages used the kind of words you can't unsee. I scrolled backward. Weeks. Months. The breadcrumb trail wasn't subtle. Coffee became lunch. Lunch became his condo. His condo became my house at noon on school days. The timestamps lined up with my invoices like a cruel joke. The thing about proof is it shuts down the part of your brain that still hopes. I printed every thread until the printer coughed. A neat stack of Betrayal sat there, warm from the tray. I didn't slam drawers. I didn't punch walls. I set the pages on the table and waited. They called me Clueless John in one chain, like I was the punchline at my own dinner table. Another thread laid out a strategy. Words like position, introduce, transition the girls. It was a corporate memo for dismantling a family. That might have been the worst part, not the heat, but the planning. Steve advised building allies with my mother. Layla gushed about how he shows up. I thought about all the times I showed up dirty, late, and carrying a toolbox. The world likes a clean shirt more than a clean record. I took a breath and kept printing. When the door from the garage opened and Layla stepped in with her yoga mat, I was already seated at the kitchen table, papers squared, mug of coffee in hand like it was any other morning. Her smile was automatic. Then it fell. She saw her words in my hands. The room shrank. I didn't stand. I let her walk into her own echoes. "Did you go through my email?" she asked, voice clipped. "No," I said. "You left the window open. I just read what you wrote." I picked one page up and read a line that didn't need sound effects to land. She sat down without being asked, that nice studio posture gone. "It's not what you think," she tried, and even she winced hearing it. "Then help me think better," I said, calm like a level on a shelf. She said I'd been distant, always working, always tired. "We were roommates," she said. "Steve was present." The word present stung because it was true sometimes. I didn't debate. Instead, I asked a single question. "My brother?" She looked at the table, at the window, at anything but me. That silence was its own confession. I slid the pages across to her. "You'll call him," I said, "and you'll tell the girls the truth." My phone buzzed. I didn't look. I was done being managed. She started to cry, mascara tracking south. She reached for the old lines. "We drifted. You shut me out. I didn't mean for this to happen." Like they were life preservers and not the holes in the boat. I said, "Don't turn my betrayal into a lecture on my feelings." That sounds harsh. It wasn't. It was a boundary nailed in straight. I stood, gathered the papers, and left her at the table with her choices. In the truck, my hands finally shook for real. On the dashboard was a school flyer I'd meant to sign. Life doesn't pause for your worst day. I reminded myself of something every builder knows. Measure twice, cut once. My anger would get one cut, and it would be clean. By the time I got to the end of the street, plan was the only word in my head. That's when resolve showed up. Quiet, heavy, useful. I went to work. Evidence first, emotions later. Contractors track fleets. It's not hard to track a liar. I ordered a GPS puck and slid under Steve's Mercedes in a hardware store lot, like I was changing oil. 10 minutes, no drama. In my garage, I aimed a little camera at the driveway, tucked behind a paint can. Then I waited, the way you wait for concrete to cure, impatient but knowing there's no shortcut. Patterns appeared in a week. Steve at noon, out by 3. Wednesdays, longer. His route included the upscale grocery with the good rotisserie chickens, like he was practicing Family Man in my kitchen. The footage wasn't scandalous, just intimate. He washed Layla's car. He tossed a basketball to Bella. He mowed the lawn I reseeded last fall. He made himself useful. That was the worst knife. Usefulness can replace you before love does. I pressed pause, stared at his smile in my driveway, and said to the empty garage, "Okay, Steve, let's see you smile at court." 2 days later, I watched him flip a burger in my backyard while the girls set the table on my patio. If you've ever had your own tools used by somebody else, you know the feeling. Shallow breath, hot ears, a pressure like a jack under your ribs. I studied the frame for tells. A hand on Layla's back that lingered, a quick glance at my camera blind spots. People reveal themselves most when they think the mirror's gone. He wasn't just visiting, he was rehearsing. I ground my teeth, then forced my jaw loose. Anger tightens your vision. I needed it wide. As the sun dropped, Layla took a picture of him wearing my apron. It hit my inbox later, attached to a thread that accidentally synced. My name was a ghost around their happiness. I closed the laptop, walked outside, and stood in my own yard under the porch light. You can replace a grill, I said to myself. Not a father. The next morning, I drove to Soul Flow Yoga. Monica and Jasmine were setting up tea lights and blocks, all calm and eucalyptus. They smiled until I held up my phone. A picture of Layla and Steve kissing in my kitchen isn't a Rorschach. It only looks like one thing. Monica's hand flew to her mouth. Jasmine said, "John, we didn't know." I kept my voice level. Emails say different. Follow your heart is sweet on mugs. In marriage, it's gasoline. They looked guilty, then defensive, then sorry. 3 faces I've seen on homeowners when a DIY goes wrong. We told her to be honest, Monica tried. With who? I asked. Herself, she said. Convenient audience, I answered. I wasn't there to torch careers, just to let the ripples start where they began. Before I left, I said, when this comes out, and it will, tell the truth fast. It's cheaper. I walked out to the bright sun and felt 10 degrees cooler. That evening, round 2, another family talk, this time with Pete on the couch like he'd been subpoenaed by friendship. Same semicircle, same couch, same mantle. Only thing new was the script. Layla started with, "We need to address your behavior today," like I'd egged a house. I thought about the thousands of screws I've driven straight, and how this was the first time in a while someone cared where I put anything. Steve watched me like a referee watches a player with too many fouls. Which behavior? I asked. Telling the truth? My mother shifted like her church dress suddenly didn't fit. Pete stared at the floor. He hates showdowns but won't leave me alone in one. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened a video I never wanted to own. I didn't hold it high. I just tapped play and let the room decide how loud their consciences were. The sound alone, breath, a laugh, a whisper, was enough. Layla lunged, "John, stop!" like she could rewind life with a grab. I pulled the phone back to my side. Why? Embarrassed now that the audience isn't handpicked? Steve stood up, red blotches sneaking up his neck. "That's enough," he said. There's a funny thing about enough. It always shows up late. My mom's eyes were wet, hands tight on the arms of my chair. The girls crumpled into each other, not understanding everything, understanding too much. I clicked pause and let the quiet roar. "We can keep pretending this is about my tone," I said, "or we can talk about choices." No one moved. The thermostat clicked on. The house knew what to do. "Here's where we start," I said, voice steady as a level. "No more meetings in my living room about me without me." Steve took a step. I held up a hand and he froze. For once, I set the rules. "Bella, Mia," I said softer, "you deserve truth, not teams." They were shaking. "If you choose to leave this room, no one will stop you. If you stay, you'll hear facts." That's a terrible thing to say to your kids, and the only thing, sometimes. I turned to my mother. "You taught me to tell the truth, even when it cost me allowance. That hasn't expired." She looked at the floor. I faced Steve. "Out of my house. Tonight." I faced Layla. "You will tell them the truth. Not your version. The truth." She opened her mouth and closed it. "Mom," Mia started. "Not now," I said gently. "Not while it's a spin class." Pete stood with me, quiet, like a brace under a sagging beam. I picked up my keys. "I'm stepping outside. When I come back, we stop managing optics and start cleaning messes." I walked to the door. No one stopped me. That was the loudest confession yet. Behind me, Layla yelled, "If you walk out, don't come back." I turned at the threshold and looked at the house I built. Nail by nail, weekend by weekend, the way men my age build their lives. I won't be pushed out of a home I paid for and a family I love. You want me gone? You'll need more than an affair and a meeting. I stepped into the evening and the cicadas were already loud, working their shift without drama. Pete followed. We drove to the anchor tap where contractors go to turn hard days into soft edges. I told one person the truth. In small towns and tight trades, truth spreads faster than rumors. By closing time, the story had legs. I didn't toast to revenge. I didn't toast at all. I just sat with a good man and watched the wheel start turning. Tomorrow would be about lawyers and numbers. Tonight was about getting my name back. News ran through Austin like a grass fire. My phone lit up. Layla crying, "Don't make a scene." Like the scene wasn't already made. I didn't answer. I called an adult. Marla Brandt, divorce and fraud, downtown office that smells like coffee and printer ink. She didn't hug me with words. She listened, took notes, asked for dates, screenshots, the GPS logs. "We'll win if you stay disciplined," she said, like a coach you respect because she knows the rule book. Men my age learn discipline the hard way. Miss a mortgage once, you remember forever. I sent every file before lunch. While the town chewed on gossip, I chewed on facts. I thought about my dad explaining receipts at the kitchen table. Paper beats story, son. The more I stacked the paper, the quieter my anger got. By sundown, I had a folder labeled Truth. It wasn't heavy in my hand, but it was heavy enough to hold me up. Discovery started fast. The court wanted transparency. Marla wanted statements back to spring. I sat at my kitchen table, my courtroom now, and traced numbers like studs inside a wall. There it was, a slow bleed. Transfers I didn't authorize, cards I never applied for, purchases that smelled like hotels and champagne. $50,000 gone in neat little bites. You don't need a law degree to recognize theft. You just need to know your own name. I printed everything, made copies, put tabs on the ugliest pages. For men who've managed budgets, little league schedules, and car payments, this is familiar work. Only this time the receipts hurt. I sent the package to Marla and poured black coffee I didn't want. I stared at the oak mantle I built and pictured my girls' college funds. A house can be rebuilt. Trust takes longer. On the last page, I wrote in pen, "For the judge, for my daughters." Steve called. "Let's talk man to man." I picked the location, Hillcrest Financial, his turf, my rules. He showed up in a suit that tried too hard, eyes with no sleep behind them. The receptionist smiled like this was normal. We sat in a glass box where people usually sign for retirements, not apologies. He started smooth. It was a loan. I kept my hands flat on the table. "Loans have signatures. Where's mine?" He tapped his pen the way liars buy time from themselves. The thing about being 40 plus, you've seen enough to spot a salesman who forgot the product. I slid the folder labeled Truth across the glass. Here's a list of charges. Here's a card I never opened. Here's a hotel I never visited. He tried a brother-to-brother smile, the one that worked when we were kids splitting a pie. I didn't bite. "We can fix this quietly," he offered. "We're already loud," I said. I laid it out like framing a wall. You're in credit card debt, condo 3 months behind, car flirting with repossession. You didn't just cheat my marriage, you stole my money to play pretend. His face drained like someone pulled a plug. Layla was there, perched on the edge of her chair, suddenly small in a room designed to sell confidence. "You can't do this," she whispered, as if gravity needed permission. "I just started over." Starting over with my cash isn't a fresh start. It's theft with mood lighting. I pointed to the signature line they forged. "You put my name where it didn't belong." Steve reached for a phrase. Family, misunderstanding, complicated. Adults know those words are tarps thrown over messes. I stood. I build for a living. I also demo. Today is demo. I left the folder on the glass like a notice nailed to a door. Outside, the heat felt honest. Inside, the story finally met daylight. That afternoon, Marla filed for divorce, custody, and fraud. Paper hit the clerk's desk like a gavel. A week later, Hillcrest put Steve on leave, the polite phrase for the long goodbye. I didn't post about it. I didn't cheer. My victories stay quiet. The point is getting my daughters through this with their heads high. Layla texted a paragraph that said nothing in many words. I remembered when we used to talk in a kitchen, lit by a single lamp while the girls slept, when good news was an extra $100 and a Saturday with no calls. Somewhere we traded hard conversations for easy distractions. This wasn't about rewinding. It was about ripping out rotten boards before the house fell. Men my age know you can't outsource that. I cooked spaghetti, checked homework, and set out trash for pickup. Ordinary jobs felt sacred. At bedtime, I wrote 3 lines: protect, provide, present. Then I signed my own name. I could have left it there. Let the courts finish the job. But I kept thinking about the word trust, the one Steve loved to sell. Hill Country Founders Day was on the calendar, and Steve was billed to talk about building financial trust at home. Maybe life writes cleaner scripts than we do. I didn't want spectacle. I wanted truth in the same air where he sold lies. So I packed a simple kit: copies of emails, bank records, a timeline that matched school days and lunch breaks. No theatrics, just enough light for the crowd to see what I'd seen. Folks our age appreciate straight talk. We've sat through enough meetings. I told myself I'd keep my voice level, my hands still. Adults can handle ugly facts when they're delivered plain. The plan wasn't revenge. It was hygiene. If a man wants a microphone to teach trust, he ought to pass a basic inspection. I was there to hold up the flashlight. The night before the festival, I assembled binders at the dining table like I was helping with a science fair. Only this one was about cause and effect in real life. Tabs read: adultery evidence, financial fraud, timeline of betrayal. The words looked dramatic, the proof didn't. It was boring in the way truth often is: dates, times, amounts. I thought about fathers I know who stretch paychecks, fix brakes, and save for braces. Those men respect receipts because receipts respect them back. I added a cover page with my name and phone number. If anyone wanted to check me, they could. No anonymous whispers, no "a friend told me." Before bed, I walked the house. The girls' rooms were quiet, trophies on shelves, art taped to walls. People say move on, like grief is a piece of furniture. It's not. It's a remodel while you still live in the house. Tomorrow, I'd start by taking out the worst wall. Festival day was Texas bright. Blue sky so clean it made you blink. Families drifted toward the stage with lemonade and folding chairs. Steve stepped up in a pale suit, practice smile on. Mike adjusted. "Today we're going to talk about trust," he said. And I felt the crowd lean in the way crowds do when they want to believe. I was front row in a clean shirt and work boots, binders under my arm. My heart didn't race. It settled into the slow, steady rhythm I get before lifting a heavy beam. He started his script: budgets, communication, alignment, good words in the wrong mouth. I stood when he asked for questions at the end of his intro. "1," I said. He recognized my voice and faltered. "Before we build trust," I continued, "shouldn't we check the foundation? People our age know. You inspect before you buy." Heads turned. The shade under the tent felt 5 degrees colder. I didn't shout. I didn't point. I held up one page like a teacher showing a worksheet. "This is an email from Steve to my wife, Layla. This is a bank statement showing $50,000 moved without consent. This is a timeline that matches school days and hotel charges." The words landed because they were plain. I didn't need adjectives. You could feel the crowd sort through it like grown-ups paying bills. What's due? What's missing? Steve's jaw tightened. "This isn't the place," he tried. "It's exactly the place," I said. "You asked families to trust you. Families deserve to know who they're trusting." A man near the back muttered, "Amen." The kind you hear at ball fields and funerals. The mayor started moving toward the stage, but the phones were already up. I closed the binder and said the line I'd practiced: "Don't hand your retirement to a man who steals from his own." Silence, then murmurs, then the weight shifted. Security walked me off like a weather front leaving town. Slow, inevitable. I didn't resist. I'd said my piece. Behind me, Steve tried to wrestle his talk back onto the rails, but there aren't rails strong enough to hold truth once it's rolling. I spotted Layla near the front, cheeks wet, eyes darting for exits. I'm not proud of anyone's public shame. I'm proud I spoke plainly. As we cleared the tent, a woman in a sun hat touched my arm. My ex did the same, she said softly. You did right. Adults don't need applause. We need confirmation we're not crazy. I found a patch of shade, called Marla, and reported what I'd done. Good, she said. Now don't gloat online. Let the documents work. I laughed once, short and tired. I build houses, not hashtags. On the way home, the binders sat quiet on the seat beside me, like passengers who'd already paid their fare. By nightfall, my phone buzzed with numbers I didn't recognize, screenshots, rumors, a 3-sentence statement from Hillcrest about values. Layla texted, "Please stop," as if I had started the fire. Steve didn't text at all. I grilled a couple burgers for me and the girls because dinner matters even when the town is looking at you. Mia ate in silence, then excused herself. Bella sat with me and watched a moth beat itself against the porch light. "Are we okay?" she asked. "We're going to be," I said, which is the truest answer grown men give when the road is long. After dishes, I took out the trash like any Tuesday. Routine is medicine. The sky over Austin was the same sky it had been yesterday, and that helped. I slept on the couch, not because I had to, but because sometimes you keep watch after a storm. The house creaked. Houses do that when they're settling. Morning brought consequences. Hillcrest accepted Steve's resignation. The festival posted a bland apology about unforeseen disruptions. Layla sent a message asking to meet without the lawyers. I forwarded it to Marla and made coffee. On my way to the truck, I paused at the garage camera I'd installed. I didn't need it anymore. I left it on anyway, not out of paranoia, but because builders leave scaffolding up until the last inspection. At lunch, I saw my girls in the crowd at the festival replay someone had posted. Mia's face was pale. Bella's eyes were hard, like she was solving a math problem with feelings. It hurt to know they'd had to learn like that, but secrets hurt worse. And longer. I turned off my phone and sanded a door for a client who didn't care about my life, just his sticky latch. Work is honest. Wood doesn't lie. If it does, you see it when the level disagrees. That night, Steve left town. No goodbye, no boxes on the curb, just a silent exit you only notice because the wrong car isn't in the driveway anymore. Layla stayed inside with the blinds down, which is its own kind of statement. Pete came over with a 6-pack and the quiet, "You need more than beer." "You scared?" he asked, not of people, but of emptiness, the kind that shows up after a fight. "No," I said. "I'm tired." Grown men know the difference. Tired is what you feel when the job's half done and you're still on your feet. We sat on the tailgate watching neighborhood joggers go by, living lives untouched by our mess. I felt a small lift, the way you do after paying a bill that's been on the fridge too long. "You did the hard part," Pete said. I shook my head. "Hard part is raising 2 girls right after this." He nodded. "Then we start tomorrow." 2 weeks later, papers hit my mailbox. Layla filed and called me emotionally harmful. Lawyers turn pain into phrases like that because courts read phrases. Marla filed our counters. Adultery, financial fraud, custody. My mother, Evelyn, moved in with Steve for a minute, said she was helping the family heal. What family, I wanted to ask, but adult sons know which sentences don't buy anything. I didn't argue. I packed school lunches, tightened a loose faucet, and drove to a job where the only demands were square corners and straight lines. The town's noise faded into the background hum of saws and compressors. People whispered. People always do. I let them. In my pocket, I carried a small card with 3 rules. Don't raise your voice. Don't text at night. Don't miss a game. You can't control what breaks. You can control how you carry it. That was my job now. Carry it clean, so my girls could set some down. In the quiet, news traveled anyway. Hillcrest scrubbed Steve's bio. A couple of Layla's clients left polite reviews without stars, the modern way to say, "no thanks." I didn't cheer. I took Bella to her photo club and Mia to practice and waved at parents who weren't sure whether to make eye contact. Adults get awkward around messes they could step in. At night, I returned to the same kitchen table where I'd read those emails and did a different kind of math. What stability costs. Groceries. Braces someday. Gas. A college fund that suddenly mattered more than ever. I set up auto transfers to accounts with the girls' names on them. Every Friday, something would move. It's a small thing, but small things add up to trust. Before bed, I wrote an apology to myself for the times I chose overtime over presents. Then I crossed it out and wrote a promise instead. The future reads promises louder than apologies. Marla called early. They want to return the 50 to avoid criminal charges, she said, sipping coffee I could hear through the phone. I let the news sit. Returning money doesn't return time or nights or faces. But justice is often practical, not poetic. Take it, I said. They can buy their freedom. They don't get to rent space in my head. Men our age understand trades, cash for consequence, peace for pride. We picked a payment plan with real dates. I asked Marla about custody. She said the case looked good. I exhaled for the first time all week. In the afternoon, I fixed a porch step for a widow who tipped me with banana bread and a hug that smelled like laundry soap. "You're a good man," she said. I didn't feel like one, but sometimes other people see the studs behind your drywall. I drove home with the window down and let the warm air do a small miracle. My mother came by with tired eyes and a pie like a peace offering. "They used me," she said, voice smaller than I remember. I made coffee and let her talk. Grown sons learn to let their mothers finish sentences that start with apology. "Can you forgive me?" she asked. Forgiveness is a tool, not a toy. You use it to build, not to forget. "Yes," I said, "but it'll take time to trust the floor again." She nodded, tears she didn't wipe away. We sat with the quiet history only families have, the fights about curfews, the rides to practice, the way good hearts get tricked by pretty words. Before she left, she squeezed my hand the way she did before exams when I was 17. "I raised a decent man," she said. I didn't argue. Sometimes you let someone you love be right, even if you're not sure. The door closed soft. The house felt a degree warmer. That night, Bella curled up next to me on the couch with a blanket that still smells like the dryer sheets Layla buys. "Dad," she said, "I get it now. I'm sorry I believed him." Kids think sorry fixes glass. Adults know it just stops more cracks. "You don't owe me sorry," I said. "You owe yourself truth." She nodded like she understood, and maybe she did. We watched a game show where nobody knew the capital of something they should have known. We laughed, and the laugh didn't sound broken. I told her we'd hit the lake this weekend with Mia if schedules lined up. "Can I drive the boat?" she asked. "Not yet," I said, "but soon." Grown men get careful with promises after life puts liens on them. Before bed, she handed me a photo she took, our front porch light against the dusk. "So we don't forget we still have home," she said. I framed it. Mia took longer. Anger sticks to firstborns. They collect responsibility like lint. She kept distance for weeks. Backpack on, earbuds in. Answers short. One night, I heard her old voicemail by accident while clearing storage. "Dad, I wish you'd get home earlier tonight." The sentence cut the way truth does. Clean, then deep. I sat at the table and let myself feel it without building around it. The next day, I got to her game early and stayed late. I didn't say sorry or, "See, I'm here." I just was. On the drive home, she said, "You didn't yell at the ref." I smiled. "Growth," I said. She cracked a smile that looked like her first birthday pictures. Little wins are still wins. At bedtime, she left her door open 2 inches. An old habit from when monsters were simpler. I took it as a truce, not a surrender. Adults make peace like that. Quiet, practical, repeatable. 4 months from the day the tribunal met in my living room, the judge signed, "I keep the house. I have full custody. Layla owes restitution." Steve declared bankruptcy and fled to Florida, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say. Papers don't heal you, but they close a door so you can stop guarding it. Outside the courthouse, Marla shook my hand like a foreman handing over a final inspection. "Go build something good," she said. So I did. I went home before the girls, fixed a squeaky hinge, and cooked tacos. When Mia walked in, she sniffed the air and said, "Nice." Bella lined up the plates like a pro. I didn't give a speech. I turned on the porch light as the sun went down and felt the house settle around us. Endings are quieter than you think. Beginnings, too. I tucked the order into the truth folder and slid it onto a high shelf where it could rest. The house was quiet, and for once that didn't mean empty. It meant peaceful. Morning light came through the kitchen like a clean restart. I burned pancakes, laughed, and tried again. Bella sat on the counter, legs swinging, handing me blueberries like we'd rehearsed it. Mia waited with that half-smile teenagers give when they don't want to admit they're rooting for you. We ate at the table without the TV on. Later, I learned how to braid Bella's hair from a 3-minute video and 15 minutes of trial and error. It looked like a rope that survived a storm, but she wore it anyway. In the afternoon, I drove Mia to soccer and stayed the whole practice. No emails, no calls, just a dad and a bleacher in a sun that finally felt warm instead of harsh. The climax was small but real. When we got home, both girls drifted to the couch, and the quiet felt earned, not forced. I started practicing listening like it was a trade. Phone face down, eyes up. When one of them spoke, I didn't hunt for fixes. I waited for the part behind the words. It's harder than pouring concrete straight in August. Mia vented about a coach who rotated her out. I didn't call the coach. I asked what she wanted. "Just you at the next game," she said. Bella described a friend drama that would have baffled any man in 1998. I didn't judge. I asked what being on her side looked like. Turns out it means snacks and rides and not repeating stories. The habit that changed me most, counting to 5 before my mouth opened. 5 beats invites wisdom you didn't know you had. The payoff came one Tuesday. Mia finished a long story, shook her head, and said, "Thanks for hearing me." It didn't sound like a trophy. It sounded like a door clicking shut in the wind, secure. Layla called a few times. I told the girls calls were theirs to take or skip. I didn't narrate her choices, didn't grade her tone, didn't add color commentary. Distance turned out to be a better consequence than anger. Anger eats your hours. Distance gives them back. On a Sunday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from her. "I want to make things right." I put it face down on the counter and went outside to fix a loose fence board. The rhythm of hammer and nail is older than apologies. Inside, the girls were laughing at a video only they understood. I listened from the yard, and the laughter didn't ache this time. It sounded like recovery. When I came back in, I told them, "You get to decide. I'm here, either way." The moment's climax was invisible and huge. I stopped needing a different past and started building the future we actually had. Work picked up. Pete and I added a small home repair arm, grab bars, ramps, safe steps, the kind of upgrades folks my age start considering for parents and ourselves. We finished by dinner, charged fair, and slept good. Sometimes at the anchor tap, a stranger would nod and say, "You're the guy who outed that finance fella, right?" I'd shrug. "I'm the guy who told the truth and still packs a lunch." They'd laugh. Men over 30 don't want heroes. They want proof life keeps going after the mess. Our new jobs came with thank you notes in careful cursive, cookies in old coffee cans, and stories about knees and grandkids. You can't deposit that at a bank, but it pays something bigger. The high point snuck in one evening. A widower shook my hand too long and said, "You made my house safer." He meant the rails. He also meant the steadiness. I drove home feeling like my name fit again. One night my mom showed up with a pie that smelled like memory. She stood on the porch like a woman visiting a museum she used to own. "I miss the girls," she said. I stepped aside. Dinner was baked chicken and quiet nerves. The girls were polite in that careful way teens are when they're watching adults try to be better. Mom told a story about me painting my room blue at 12 and getting more on the carpet than the wall. We laughed. That sound loosened the room. No one said forgive. No one said fault. We passed salad and kept reaching for the salt at the same time. A small choreography came back. Muscle memory from happier kitchens. The climax was a subtle click. Mia handed my mother the last piece of pie and said, "Take it for breakfast." Old bridges don't rebuild with fireworks. They rebuild with slices wrapped in foil. Saturday afternoon, Mia's team won 2-1. She scored the first goal and did that little hop she's done since she was 8. I stood at the fence with the other parents, trying not to look like a man cataloging a miracle. She scanned the bleachers, found me, and lifted a hand. Not a wave, exactly. A salute. I felt something lift off my chest. I didn't know I'd been caring since she was born, and I promised myself I'd show up. After the game, she said, "You saw it." I said, "Front row," and held up the scuffed ball she tossed me during warm-ups. If you're over 30, you know those exchanges don't last long. Housework, schoolwork, life rushes back. But for that minute, it was just us in a field that had decided, for once, to be kind. The climax was private. On the drive home, she sang along to the radio without skipping the song. Bella brought me a drawing, pencil lines of a front porch, 2 chairs, a dog that looked more like a bear. Title in the corner, "Me and Dad." I grinned. "You forgot Mom." She didn't flinch. "Next one can be Grandma." The air shifted not against anyone, just toward what remained. We taped it to the fridge with a magnet Mia made in kindergarten. Bella said, "Can we build a planter box?" We sketched on a napkin, argued about height, then went to the garage to rescue leftover cedar. While we cut and sanded, I told her how I learned to measure with my thumb when the tape went missing. She tried it and laughed when she got half an inch off. "Close enough for art," I said. When we set the box on the porch, dirt under our nails and that clean cedar smell, she took a photo and said, "This is ours." That word, ours, stuck like a nail driven true. Late that night, the house felt like a museum of second chances. Oak floors I'd laid after midnight, a wobbly table I'd leveled, light fixtures that stopped buzzing because I finally listened. I took a slow tour. Every fix had a story. The dishwasher that quit on Thanksgiving and taught me patience. The door that creaked like a ghost until I learned which hinge needed love. I used to see repairs as interruptions. Now I saw them as proof. The climax arrived quietly. In the hallway, a framed photo of our first day in the house. Boxes everywhere, hope all over our faces. I didn't feel sad, I felt accurate. We were those people, and we're these people. Both can be true. I turned off lights, one by one, like closing chapters that didn't owe me anything. In bed, I stared at the ceiling fan and let it blur. The room didn't feel empty. It felt ready. I thought about Steve now and then, the way you think about a road you don't take anymore. I wasn't angry. Anger is a bill you keep paying after you've moved. Mostly I felt a complicated mercy. He wanted my life without my work. That math doesn't balance. I imagined him restarting somewhere humid, telling a story where he's the cautionary tale or the victim depending on the listener. Life will teach him either way. It always does. Men in our age bracket learn to leave some doors closed, even if curiosity rattles the knob. My job wasn't to track him. My job was to track receipts, grades, and bedtime. The high point came one afternoon in traffic when our song from way back rolled on. I didn't turn it off. I didn't turn it up. I let it play at the volume of memory. Present, but not in charge. The light turned green. I drove. An email arrived from Layla. "I regret what I did." 2 lines. No defense. No adjectives. I stared at it until the cursor stopped blinking like a heartbeat. There are apologies that invite conversations and apologies that are just weights set down on your side of the scale. I didn't need either, not out of spite. Out of stewardship, my attention was a resource, and I wanted to spend it on 2 girls, a business, and a life that needed steady hands. I archived the email and went outside to check the gutters. The sky was that washed-out blue you get before a storm, and the first leaves of fall had started to dry and curl. I scooped out handfuls and felt lighter with each dump into the bin. The climax was simple. Back inside, the inbox felt smaller and the house felt bigger. Some mistakes don't need replies. They need boundaries wide enough to hold peace. Life slowed in the good ways. We planted tomatoes that would absolutely roast in July and cheered them on anyway. I taught Mia to merge onto the highway without flinching, and Bella to back the truck into the driveway without taking out the mailbox. We laughed at my old road trip CDs and made new playlists where my songs snuck in between theirs. On Friday nights, we made nachos that disrespected portion sizes and watched movies that gave us lines to borrow in hard moments. Adults know joy doesn't come from perfect days. It comes from practiced rituals. The climax came on a Sunday afternoon when nothing was on the calendar and we liked it that way. We dozed in different corners of the living room with the game low on TV. When we woke, nobody apologized for the nap. That's healing too. Rest without guilt. A house that holds you instead of asking for proof you belong. I realized something that would have saved me years if I had learned it sooner. You can't stop someone from betraying you, but you can refuse to betray yourself in the cleanup. That looks like telling the truth without telling it to everyone. It looks like refusing to become a detective in your own home once the case is closed. It looks like keeping promises you make after midnight when courage is cheap, and keeping them again at dawn when courage costs. I wrote 3 on an index card. Be present. Be fair. Be done. I taped it inside the pantry where only I'd see it. The payoff came at a parent-teacher conference when the counselor said, "The girls seem steadier. Not happy every minute. Not magically healed. Steadier." Adults understand that word. It means the floor isn't moving under your feet anymore. You can set things down and trust they'll stay. I drove past Soul Flow Studio one afternoon and saw a for lease sign leaning inside the glass. The room looked smaller without people, just mirrors and memory. I parked for a minute and let the old lavender eucalyptus smell roll through my head. A younger version of me might have called someone, sent a picture, asked for closure like it was a receipt. Instead, I shook my head at my own almost impulse, started the truck, and pulled away. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt neutral, which turned out to be a gift. Indifference, I learned, is the other side of healing. When the past isn't an enemy or a friend, it's just the past. The climax was the lack of one. No speech, no prayer, no curse. Just a green light, a turn signal, and a life that didn't need landmarks to tell me where I was going. We hit Lake Travis on a Saturday with a cooler full of sandwiches that would taste better after sun and wind. Mia paddled a kayak like she had somewhere to be. Bella took pictures of clouds pretending to be mountains. I let the boat idle and watched them be more themselves than they had been in months. Families build memory like carpenters, measure experiences, cut them to fit, and join them with laughter. The climax arrived in a splash. Mia fell in, came up laughing, and Bella captured the exact second joy overcame embarrassment. On the drive home, windows down, we smelled like sunscreen and freedom. That night, I found water spots on the truck seats and didn't care. Evidence of a good day belongs where you can see it. I slept like a man whose house was finally quiet in the right ways, the kind that come from used towels and emptied coolers. On the way back from the lake, Bella said, "I think Mom still loves you." I kept my eyes on the road because 15-year-olds are lie detectors. "Maybe," I said. "Sometimes love isn't enough if respect didn't come along." The car got quiet in a helpful way. We let the wind write the next lines. Mia asked if that meant love was weak. "No," I said. "It's strong. It just has rules. It needs truth the way a house needs a foundation. At a stoplight, a couple crossed holding hands the way people do when they've paid for their piece. I didn't point them out. I just noticed and let the noticing settle. The climax was a shared understanding I didn't force. Bella nodded once like a student who finally likes the math. We turned into our neighborhood and the porch lights came up in stages, a runway inviting us home. We started a Sunday workshop tradition, 30 minutes in the garage, tools on the bench. Whoever shows up helps. Week 1 was a leaky trap under the sink. Bella asked, "How do you know all this?" I said, "Because I had to, and because I wanted to." Then I added, "Same way we're learning family again." We measured twice, cut once, and still got it wrong, which is how you learn to laugh while you fix things. I handed Mia the drill. She drove a screw too deep and pulled it out herself. "No harm," I said. "Holes are just future lessons." The payoff came when we turned the water back on and nothing leaked. We cheered like we'd won a championship. Adults over 30 know the truth. Nothing tastes better than a simple win earned together. We washed hands at the laundry sink and left the garage a little cleaner than we found it. That night, I wrote in a notebook I bought for invoices and kept for feelings. Loss doesn't end you. It ends the version of you that can't carry what's next. Betrayal doesn't decide your character. It reveals everyone's. I'm not writing this to be wise. I'm writing it so tomorrow when a bill is late or a tire is low or someone says the wrong thing at the wrong time, I remember today's steadiness. I put the pen down and sat there long enough for the ink to dry. Adults know that matters. The climax came in the smallest possible way. I closed the notebook without needing to reread a single line. Trust isn't fireworks. It's a door you can close gently because you know you'll open it again in the morning and find the same room waiting. I stood on the porch and looked toward Austin's glow. Somewhere out there, thousands of people were nursing quiet disasters with whatever courage they could afford. I wanted to tell them there's a version of the future that isn't about winning, just about being steady enough to notice the good again. The cicadas were loud the way they get when nights stretch long and warm. I thought of my father's hands and my daughter's voices and the kind of man I'm trying to be in the middle. The payoff rolled in with a breeze that finally broke the heat. I breathed, and it felt like breathing, not bracing. I turned off the porch light because we were all inside, safe, and the house didn't need to signal anymore. The street was calm. So was I. Before bed, I found an old voicemail, Mia at 13, still small in her words. "Dad, I wish you'd get home earlier." I sat on the edge of the bed and let it play twice, not as punishment, as proof. Then I hit record and left a new message I hoped they'd never need. "I'm here, not perfect, here." I checked the locks out of habit and turned off the last light. The bed I once hated felt like a place I'd earned back by showing up. The climax was gentle and absolute. I slept through the night without waking to arguments no one was making anymore. Morning would bring a sink, a schedule, a list. Good is enough. I used to think strength meant keeping everything from falling apart. Now I know it's standing up in the rubble and building again, one honest board at a time. I lost a wife, a brother, and the version of myself that thought providing was enough. I kept the things that matter, my girls, my name, and a house that finally feels like home because the truth lives here. If you ask what I believe after all this, I'll say 3 simple things. Truth beats story, presence beats perfection, and love without honesty is manipulation dressed nice. This was never revenge. It was a family audit. I brought receipts. I fixed what I could, and I let the rest go. The porch light is off now because we're inside. The toolbox is put away because the frame holds. Tomorrow there will be chores, laughter, and something leaking. Good. That means life returned. And when it does, you don't celebrate loud. You show up.